Chris Holm is an award-winning writer who lives in Portland. He has a new novel out. It's called Child Zero, and he's with us here on 207 to talk about this and other matters. Thanks for coming in. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So one of the authors who read the book and really liked it said that it gave him nightmares in the best possible way. Is that a good thing, Chris?
You know, I sincerely hope so, because if Lou Berney didn't actually mean that, then it turns out he hated my book. But it seems that everybody who reads the book agrees that it is thrilling and terrifying, and I suppose since it is a thriller, that's not a bad place to sit.
Well, you've got a pretty ambitious and out of the ordinary kind of story. Let me see if I can do it justice. It is set in New York City. It is at a time, roughly a contemporary time, but it's a different world because infectious diseases have been unleashed as they have mutated, and it turns out that antibiotics are not effective against them. So all the diseases, many of the diseases that we thought we would never have to worry about again, that they'd been conquered decades ago, are back and inflicting a terrible human toll. Is that about right?
That is correct. And I wish I could tell you that that was science fiction, but the fact is scientists and public health officials have been warning about the collapse of the antibiotic era for decades, and it's largely fallen on deaf ears. I think the reason for that is because the public at large fails to understand the enormity of the threat of a post-antibiotic era, and because before I turned to thriller writing full-time, I made my living as a molecular biologist. So I felt that maybe I had an opportunity to paint in vivid detail the terrifying reality we could be facing if we don't do something to avert it.
You clearly wanted to get the science right in this, and so for readers who maybe aren't familiar with your background and they say, well, yeah, what does this guy think he is, a molecular scientist? Well, yes, actually, that is what you are.
That's exactly right. I was inspired by the thrillers I came up on, like Michael Crichton, who had such a knack for translating really heady scientific concepts into things that everyone can understand. I mean, Jurassic Park is a brilliant lesson in genetics, masquerading as an adventure story. And I really set out to do something similar with this book.
Well, this is to some degree a plague book. And yet, you started writing it, you had the idea for it, you started writing it, and you finished writing it before COVID really came into our lives?
That's correct. I actually started writing this book in 2016, right after my last book, Red Right Hand, came out. And the problem was I had been kicking around some ideas with my agent about what I wanted to explore next, and I wanted to take a big swing. And I pitched him this idea that I would really love to write a thriller that takes place in a post-antibiotic era. And he said, tell me what that means. And I was like, well, you have to understand that, for one, diseases long thought beaten are going to come surging back, become major killers again, like tuberculosis or pneumonia. Organ transplants and implants of any kind, hip, knee, cosmetic, will be a thing of the past. Because factory farming is so reliant upon antibiotics, there'll be widespread food insecurity. Chemotherapy, radiation, steroid treatments will become options of last resort because they decimate the immune system. A paper cut could kill you.
So this is interesting. When you were pitching this idea, did your agent say to you, or did other people along the line say, it's too dark, people don't want to read something that is that terrifying?
You know, no one did, and perhaps they should have, because I had no intention of releasing this during a pandemic. But I think what a lot of people saw in it was the potential, I think, of Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11, was a post-apocalyptic sort of story. Obviously, Stephen King's The Stand. People do have a hunger for that, and in fact, during the early days of COVID, Steven Soderbergh's Contagion was one of the most popular movies on streaming platforms. So there is a hunger for that. That said, this book isn't necessarily a book about a pandemic. It's actually a breakneck thriller that takes place with a pandemic as its backdrop.
Well, as another key element in the story, in the plot, there is a mass murder, and you have a New York City police detective, or a detective, who has to try to solve the murder. So you've got a lot of things that you had going on. Was it fun for you to write this book because you were taking on a real challenge in trying to tell this story?
Absolutely. Every book I write, I try to challenge myself to do something I haven't done before. And in this one, what I really wanted to do was create an entirely plausible world in which this book takes place. That's one of the reasons it took 6 years. I actually probably cut more words than are in the final book, because I knew if I was writing a thriller that involved molecular biology, I needed a lot of action as the spoonful of sugar to get that medicine to go down. And so I really had to pare back everything that was ancillary to the story. But yeah, it was a lot of fun as a scientist and as a thriller writer to imagine the ripples of what would happen when the antibiotic era came to a screeching halt.
Well, there's a lot here to consider that is not found in the typical thriller. The name of it, Child Zero by Chris Holm. Thanks again for coming in, Chris. We appreciate you being here. We've got more information on the book and the author in the 207 section of our New Center Maine app and website. Stay with us. Back in a moment.